Well, hello chaps, and welcome back to another episode of DTH Reviews, and today we are doing Infamous Second Son. I believe this is our first ever next-gen exclusive that we've done, is that right?
Current-gen exclusive.
Oh, sorry, it's switcheroo, has it?
Get it right,
current...
Jesus.
Okay, so first ever current-gen review, awesome. So, quickly before we start, have you played the rest of the franchise? Have you played the previous two?
Infamous 2 is the only one I played. I played it, I think when it went up on PlayStation Plus, which was, I don't know, like 8 months after it came out or something. And I played through that and really, really enjoyed it. And then I went...
They are great games, yeah.
I went back to try and play Infamous 1 and it just didn't... It didn't really work. It didn't do anything for me. Yeah, you know, sort of going back like 3 years. So, yeah, so I've played Infamous 2 and that's my experience with it. And it was great. I loved it. What about you? Did you play?
I played 1 and 2, yeah. I'm a big fan of the games. And if no one's played them before, I guess you could kind of describe them as open world, third-person, sci-fi
action
shooter? I guess they are
Yeah,
shooters.
I mean, it is really...
You break it down.
It is a lot like a shooter, yeah.
So, Infamous Second Son. Before we go into anything else, you know, this is next gen. This is the first proper PlayStation 4 game we talked about. Let's talk about graphics.
Yes.
Let's talk about how it looks. So, I'll quickly start off by saying when you first you start the game, it looks good.
Yeah.
It looks good. It looks shiny. But there is something kind of strange about this game where it will look consistently good throughout nearly all of it. But every now and then, you'll hit a small section and it will just look like the best game I've ever seen in my life. And I'm not sure what it is about these specific areas. I'd like to say that the whole game looks like this, but it doesn't seem to be. It seems to be like these unique areas. And every now and then you'll just stop and you'll be like, Jesus Christ, this looks like real life. And it's kind of bizarre and kind of awesome.
Yeah, I think... Like you said, it like the first hour you're like, okay, yeah, this looks good, and then you get to the city and you're like, yeah, this is sharp. And then like the time of day changes or something, and those time of day changes really, really make it look incredible. And then every once in a while you get to those smaller areas, and the game is just like, I'm gonna start running at 60 frames per second, and
yeah, I think that's it.
And that really makes it look amazing. But I think it might be like the best looking thing I've seen. I don't remember the last time I played something that like every half hour or so I would just stop and look at it and be like, hot damn, this looks incredible. You know, Killzone Shadowfall,
surprising as well.
Yeah, Killzone Shadowfall looked really good, don't get me wrong, but
we expected it to look good.
Yeah, you expect it to look good, and it's a first person shooter, sci-fi, and it's like I've seen like these are just linear corridors. Sometimes they're open, and it looks great, but it didn't really blow me away. But yeah, Infamous, like I was expecting it to look good, but I was not expecting it to look as good as it does and run as well as it does. And there's like so many particle effects, and it's all open world, and there's no load times, and like there is not a single... I have not come across like even a one-off little alleyway that doesn't look sharp as nails. Like it just I think sharp is the best way to describe how that game looks. Like it is just razor blade sharp all the time, and you're right, at times it looks like it consistently looks great, and then every once in a while it's unbelievably gorgeous, and no videos do it justice. I think like as soon as there's even the tiniest bit of compression on it, it loses its crispness. There we go. So like a YouTube video, it doesn't do it. I don't think it does it justice. It's something that has to be, you have to see it on a TV in motion and to really appreciate just how amazing it looks. Yeah,
I think it has quite a unique art style as well. I think it's kind of bizarre. The first two games are much more, how would you say, comic book like.
Yeah.
And I think this one, it does have like a cartoonish vibe, but then when you look at the backdrop of the water and the lighting, it looks literally like real life. So there's sometimes where it has this kind of weird contrast between looking like, you know, just like a video game, and then the background looks like a like a movie. It's hard to put into words, but I really like how it looks. And yeah, I think it was very surprising to see a company like Sucker Punch, right?
Yeah.
And seeing what, you know, at the beginning of this console generation, what they could do with it, and it's exciting.
Yeah,
to see
it's really exciting.
see what like people like Naughty Dog are going to do with it.
Jesus,
it's pretty crazy.
Oh yeah, I think 99% of the reason that they set it in Seattle was because it rains all the time in Seattle, and that means wet pavement all the time in Seattle.
Oh, those raindrops, man. Oh.
Because like wet pavement and neon lights, it will never not look incredible, and that I feel like the only reason it takes place there is because it gave them an excuse to have constantly wet pavement, which it never stops looking amazing.
Okay, so I reckon the best way to break down Infamous is kind of two sections, which is traveling and movement, and combat, which is kind of what the game combines all the time. And so let's break it down. Traveling in the first two Infamous games, you had one power, which was electricity. So you could climb up buildings, you could hover around, you could kind of glide through the air
and get on the power lines and zip around.
Yeah, but it was slightly different in this one. It did feel different, even though it was ultimately an Infamous game. It did have a different feel, and I think they did. They put some effort into negating the reason to climb buildings. I didn't find myself climbing much. With the smoke power, just a note, we are only going to be showcasing the smoke and neon power in this video to avoid spoiling future powers. But there are 4 powers in the games, which we won't spoil. But they all act differently. You can travel and fight different with each of them. But with the smoke one, there's like vents at the bottom of buildings where you can zip up to the top. And with neon, you literally just run up buildings. So I feel like they were trying to just push away from you having to climb at all. Which was, I don't know if I did like it. Was quicker. It was much quicker to get around. But then, like, one of the only complaints I had in the game is the climbing didn't feel as good as the previous games. I'm not sure if you really noticed that, but the climbing, I don't know, I would get stuck a while, and it felt much slower once they gave you the ability to zip up buildings. But I think overall I did prefer the fact that you could just zip up buildings instead of having to climb up drain pipes and up windowsills, etc. Definitely.
Like, I think the traversal, like you said, the climbing stuff, you've noticed it in the first couple hours because all you have is smoke, and honestly, climbing up buildings when all you have is smoke kind of sucks. Like, you get stuck on things, you're hitting your head on things, and I was sort of like, okay, I don't really want to ever use smoke again to get around. And like all that traversal, the climbing just without powers never really feels great. Whereas in the previous two, it felt really good, but in this, they definitely say like you should be using your powers to get around. And I was much happier doing that because I'm a superhero. I don't want to climb on a fucking ladder. I want to neon up the side of that building, you know? So
I think they did a good job of balancing the powers. I feel like neon was the most effective to travel with, but I felt smoke could be more devastating in combat.
Yep.
So I think even with all 4 of them combined, I think there was always a reason to use different ones over the others, even though I did use neon the most. But I think they did a pretty good job of making you not stop using smoke even when you have the last power.
Yeah, definitely. And I've noticed I've started playing it a bit on the hardest difficulty just because I'm probably going to end up platinuming the game. And it on normal, you kind of can feel like you can just stick with one power and keep using it, but on a harder difficulty, you definitely have to switch things up more frequently, I find. And I've been finding, like, especially, like you said, like, neon is sort of long range, precise, and then smoke is like huge area of effect, just blow everything up, and the other one is sort of a combination of those two, I think. The third power is sort of like half stealth, half blow everything up. And
yeah, there's some stealth aspects in the third one.
And then the fourth power is just like, I'm a Hulk, I can do whatever I want, sort of.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the power diversity, like, initially it may not seem like there's much difference aside from the colors, but I think especially if you start playing at a higher difficulty, it really you start to notice that, like, I should not be using neon for these guys. I should switch to smoke. So that was nice because I don't really remember the power variety in the second game.
No, I was trying to think. I
definitely
do believe there's more than one.
Yeah, you can get like ice, I'm pretty sure, at one point.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure. I haven't played that game in a while. Like, I booted it up just recently just to see what it was like, but I don't remember the power diversity in that game being huge. So I could be wrong.
No, it's mainly
though.
just electricity.
Yeah, I think so.
That was the focus.
Yeah. And then the other aspect is the actual sort of shooting of it all.
Yeah.
Now I went, like I just said, I went back and played a little Infamous 2 just to see how it felt, and it is like noticeably looser when compared to Second Son. Like it's both looser and way tighter in that, like, when you're jumping around, you're sticking to things like crazy. Like, you're magnetizing to things in Infamous 2 really, really easily. But then when you go to shoot, your aiming abilities are all over the place. It was really noticeable just how much looser everything about Infamous 2's movement and shooting was compared to Second Son. I think they really tightened it up a little, just a little bit, and I think it felt but really good throughout, just the aiming and the responsiveness of it all.
I really think the Second Son combat was better. I noticed one significant difference very early on. In the previous Infamouses, you have your kind of, like, let's say, set powers, where you have standard shooting, an RPG-like attack, and a grenade-like attack. But I'm not sure if you noticed, but in Second Son, the grenade attacks, which come with every power, are actually non-lethal. And in the previous games, they were lethal, and they would just blow people up. And I remember clearly in the previous Infamous games just kind of spamming grenades and rockets.
Yeah.
And I didn't really use any strategy in combat. It was just me lobbing electricity grenades and firing RPGs. Where in Second Son, the grenades were, non-lethal. They all had effects, usually stunning people.
Yeah.
And the RPGs were pretty damn limited. You only have like three to begin with, and then you have to recharge. So you really had to be more careful in combat. I definitely found myself dying quite a lot at the beginning of the game before I was kind of used to it. And it has a small learning curve, and I think it's just a bit more satisfying, a bit more challenging than the previous Infamouses, which I felt were a bit like spam electricity everywhere. Yeah. And yeah, I just enjoyed it a bit more than the previous games.
Now then, there's also a story, which is I thought it was pretty decent. It was
alright.
It was not amazing, but I literally remembered nothing about Infamous 2's story aside from it not being interesting. And I remember Infamous 2's characters not being very good. Like, the main guy was a gruff, bald, white guy.
Sorry to interrupt, but the end of the first Infamous, I won't spoil it if you ever want to go back, but it actually had a really decent ending with a really interesting twist. Right. No spoilers, but I just thought I'd mention that.
Yeah, I've heard about that. So, my only experience is Infamous 2, and that game gets really fucking crazy near the end, and I don't even remember which ways. But then, the characters were kind of just, especially, that, the main guy was fine, and then his side companion, Zeke, was, I don't know, they were all sort of annoying, and I thought that all of the characters in Second Son, they started off being not very likable. Like, I was kind of like, main character is kind of a douchebag, his brother is kind of goofy, the girl is whatever, the villain is stupid. But then I think every character kind of gets more likable as it goes on, and gets... Yeah, I agree. They all show their different sides as the game progresses, and it was... I think the presentation of it all really helps. Like, just, the mocap and the cutscenes and everything always looks so good, and the performances are good that it sort of helps. Yeah, voice acting's great. It helps keep the story from kind of falling on itself when it isn't always at its best. So I was surprised. I ended up enjoying it right to the end. The characters were decent, and I wasn't expecting anything from its story, and I ended up enjoying it decently. There's also not a ton of stuff to do in the game once you're done with the story. Like, you play through the story and it's like 10 hours long, maybe. And then the side content is all super simple, repetitive. Just, go quickly, hit this button, find the hidden camera, go shoot this. It's all really fast. It kind of reminded me of Saints Row 4, actually, the side stuff. Yeah, very much so. Like, Saints Row 4, quick story, great story. A ton of fun to play, but then the side missions were kind of like, and it's the same with this game. I just want to keep playing it, which is why I've started playing through the story again on Evil and Hard, because I wish there was a little more to the side stuff, because I would be quite happy to just keep playing this game and You know, I can't really...
Yeah.
Like, I'm not really bothered by it much, and I think that might be because it's still kind of technically like a launch game for the PS4, and there has been so little for the PS4, but I was a little disappointed with the side stuff, even though I did it all, and quite happily did it all.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did enjoy the format of the small mini quests. As you said, they're not exactly the most original and fleshed out little missions, but I did enjoy that you could kind of fly around the cities and do these literally like 30 seconds to 1 minute kind of side quests. And I feel at the very beginning of the game, I see my first 5 hours, I really just spent kind of flying around and just trying out different things. And as you said, when you get further through the game, they're not as creative and they do get a bit repetitive. But I did like how quick they were. You know, you just hopped around, you spent 1 minute doing this and you moved on, you did another minute, and I found myself doing tons of these without really doing any missions. And you know, we haven't even mentioned that there's the classic collectible that upgrades you scattered around the city, shards. So you kind of you see them on the radar and you spend like hours just collecting these little dots to upgrade your character out of pure addiction. But in between the missions, you know, as you said, they're not the best, but they do a good job of pacing. I feel you don't feel like there is much wasted time in between where you're just kind of traveling between stuff. Quickly before we move on, talking about just the missions in general, outside of the average boss fights to sometimes kind of annoying boss fights, I didn't feel like the missions themselves felt that different, if you know what I mean. They didn't feel like I was doing something that I couldn't be doing elsewhere. Like, for comparison, Grand Theft Auto, every mission you would do is something you felt like you couldn't accomplish while free roaming the city.
Yeah.
But in Infamous, there was a lot of go here, blow people up. And I'm not saying every single mission was. There was some interesting missions. I think my favourite mission was near the beginning where you have to climb the Seattle Tower. That was a fun mission. But just a lot of them just kind of felt like stuff I was doing anyway. And, you know, it's kind of like the Assassin's Creed 4 stuff. We didn't review Assassin's Creed 4, but I said Assassin's Creed 4 didn't have many main missions that attracted me, but it still was one of my favourite Assassin's Creed games, just because of the stuff that was outside of the missions. And I think the same rule applies to Infamous, that the whole package and the pacing makes it good overall. I just wish there could have been some kind of a bit more original and diverse missions, I feel.
Yeah, I think that's sort of always been Infamous's one of its problems, is that the missions are kind of just like, go here, shoot some guys, go here. And like you said, it would have been nice to have, you know, some more exciting things to do, like more climbing the Space Needle type missions where you can't recreate it when you're just free roaming. But yeah, I mean, it'd be nice, but at the same time, I was perfectly happy to just be playing it, you know.
I was content the whole way through.
Absolutely. And that is kind of a good summary of it. It's like, I was content playing this from beginning to end. And it was nice to have something on the PS4 that it didn't really feel new, but it looked new, and it was just a high quality game that was only available on this system. It kind of made me, it was just like, oh yes, I remember why I bought this thing, not to play Assassin's Creed.
And before we move on to the conclusion, one really little feature they implemented, which I didn't think would make a big difference, was they utilised the in-controller speaker really well, and it made a surprising difference. If people don't know, they don't own a PlayStation 4, the controller has a little speaker in it which outputs sound a quite good volume. Yeah. And they implemented it when you were using a spray can, and you would shake the controller and it would make the noise of a spray can, and it was
and every time your phone rang, and
I mean, your phone rang and you could hear it coming through your hands. And we played Killzone, and you know, the only thing they did was audio logs, and I felt like this was the first game I played where it kind of felt like they implemented this kind of novelty to a better extent. And I like the little things they did with it, and it was cool.
So let's wrap it up. What are you gonna give it?
I'm gonna go with 4 stars.
Yeah.
I really liked it. I didn't feel it was original and strong enough to be a 5-star game, but it was really strong. It was probably the best next-gen game I've played so far after the pretty terrible initial lineup. And it's kind of just made me more excited for the future of next gen. I'm looking forward to what's coming up.
Yeah, I agree completely. It was it definitely lacks in a few aspects, but it looks amazing. It plays really good. It's nice to have something that is, and it's just nice to have something good and new feeling for the PlayStation 4 that isn't
yeah.
Call of Duty, Battlefield, or Assassin's Creed, or Killzone. So yeah, it was. It's a ton of fun. I'm still playing it. I will probably end up platinuming it, which would be my first platinum for a PlayStation game. So that goes to show that A, there's not much to play on the PS4, and B, I want to play it, and this is a good game to play. So if you have a PS4, you should definitely buy it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, that about wraps it up. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll be back next time.